All right, guys, can everybody hear me? Make sure we are live action. Okay, yes,
I,
people can hear me. People can hear me. Awesome. Okay, so we are live action, guys. It's episode 2 of the Study Doc Show. And if you guys missed our previous interview, make sure you go back and watch that. It was awesome. And tonight we have hopefully an even better session with Dr. Viney here with us today. So we're going to hit the intro and we're going to get right into it, guys. Remember, this is a live session. So if you guys are here with us, you can ask questions. We're here to help you guys get better. That's all we're doing. We're donating our time. Dr. Viney's very busy, like I'm very busy. So take the time, ask us questions, put what you have to say in the box. And if you were excited, like this video, let's hit the intro and then we will get going.
What I teach you guys is transformation. If you didn't dominate, changes need to be made. So I give you guys entire systems that make you new. But stop making excuses, stop whining, stop, right? Get at it. No excuses, just dominate.
All right, guys. Yes, we are live action. We're going to bring it today with Dr. Viney. I'm going to bring him on right now. Let's see if I can do this right. Oh, and it worked. And it worked. And we're here with Dr. Viney. And Dr. Viney's bio, I think there's been a couple people in my life who I'm extremely impressed by their CVs, and Dr. Viney is one of them. His CV is extensive. His interests are across the board. And so I wouldn't even attempt to introduce him to you guys. So I'll let Dr. Viney do a brief intro of himself really quickly for you guys, because it's an incredible CV. And we're going to dive into his career and also how you guys can get better. But go ahead, Dr. Viney, introduce yourself. Say hello to everybody.
Hello, everybody. And I guess with initials CV, I guess I have to.
Boom. That's why you were destined to have one of these stellar CVs that you look at and you're like, how is this possible for one human being to do all of these amazing things in one lifetime?
It's all in the initials, and as a Gemini, of course, I'm a split personality, so there's two human beings here, right? Thank you for the kind remarks there, and great to be here. My background in a nutshell, what surprises people, English is not my first language, so it was actually German. So my message is, if you are an English language learner, learn your English and keep going. Good luck.
Where are my ESL people, my English language learners? Because I'll stop you there, because I have a ton of students, and particularly a lot of my students are pre-meds, and one of the big hangups is they're like, oh, well, I don't know English well enough to survive in higher education. I don't know English well enough to be successful. You're proof that that's not the case, right? So let's talk about that for a second. Actually, I'll let you finish the rest of your bio, and then we'll talk about that. I think it's a great topic. So go ahead and finish.
Well, so I spoke German at home until I went to school. My mom was German. She was also a refugee, I should say, and so I have a lot of room and a lot of time for people who struggle, come from somewhere, and really have to work in the system, and sometimes even work a little bit against the system to be able to make the progress that they believe that they're capable of, as long as it's legal, right? That's the important thing. But anyway, yes, so I was born in England, German mom, moved to South Africa when I was 5, elementary and high school out there, went to Cambridge University in England, UC, so those of you from California, if you think about the UC, I will tell people I went to the original UC, 800 years and counting. It's like Hogwarts, magical, great place. And I studied there material science. It's a science degree in the UK, material science. I didn't want to quit physics, didn't want to quit chemistry, so I found a great way to mix them, and in fact also learn some biology as I've continued in that sort of field. I came to California for the first time in the mid-1980s, worked for IBM. It was a year in industry. It was a great experience. Faculty position at the University of Washington in materials and then in bioengineering. Back to the UK, University of Oxford in a materials department, north of the border in Scotland in a chemistry department, which I chaired for a short while. And then the opportunity to come back to California, to the University of California at Merced, which was a golf course when I first saw it. There were no buildings, there were no faculty. I'm one of the first 8 faculty that got hired into this place. This is not me wanting to brag, but just to give you a statistical indication here, it was told to me by the provost at the time, in those days, the application stack for faculty positions at UC Merced was bigger than the application stack for people to become an astronaut. I'm glad I got in the
Wow.
right stack. I don't think I could have been an astronaut.
Wow.
Anyway.
Can you guys believe that's wow.
Uh,
That's incredible. But you know what? It had to be because you knew, and we'll talk about UC Merced. I'm a big fan of the Bobcats here, UC Merced. But people had to know that when they're forming a new UC, this is going to be a prime place where lots of resources are going to go and lots of exciting opportunities are going to be for growth. So that's incredible that you were able to get in there as a founding member of UC Merced and a founding faculty member, one of 8. It's awesome.
I was lucky and I am lucky.
That's what I say. It's all luck and chance. The clerical error in my favor. Do not bank collects $200, that kind of thing. But no, we know it's because you were a stellar applicant.
That's kind of you. Bottom line, I work hard, and if you don't fill in the application, you'll never know if you're going to get in or not. Well, that's important. So if you're not going to get in, it's because there was competition. Maybe they found somebody else who fit the bill better, but you won't know what you can do until you try.
Yeah. So awesome. Long bio, guys. If you guys are with us, we are live action. I'm Dr. Pinesett. This is Dr. Christopher Viney, and he's here with us today. We are live, bringing you guys some great information. And I think let's start with that because I hinted at that as you brought that up. But growing up, so you're an immigrant to this country. You're a English second language student and professional. How did you successfully make that transition? Did you have any feelings of being an imposter? Was it scary? Was it difficult? And how did you bridge to become the success you are today as someone who technically, statistically, forget your application to UC Merced, statistically, it should have been a very difficult path and you should have struggled to survive. How did you make it happen? Because that's what happens, right? You made it happen. How did you make it happen?
I was fortunate, and I will return to good fortune from time to time. So I was fortunate that my parents taught me a good work ethic. So and if I would like to think if they hadn't taught me, somebody else would have. I had teachers, and so there were at various stages there were people in my life who taught me the work ethic, taught me how to take advantage of opportunities. I should be careful not to overstate the English second language learner because I was 6 when I first learned English. It was an interesting experience because actually I would say probably 5 when I really learned English, but it was an interesting experience because moving to South Africa there was some antagonism almost towards people who had an English accent. In America, they love an English accent. In South Africa, English accent, a little bit of a German sort of tinge to it, and then somebody who's doing well in class. So I got bullied in my early years in school, and so I stood. You stand up for myself. Never fight people in an unkind way, but stand up for yourself. Show them what you're good at. Help other people to become good at the things you can help them with. So, don't keep it to yourself. And if you found a way to climb the ladder, bend down, take someone by the hand and help them up to where you are. And maybe give them a good shove and maybe they can even go further up the ladder than you can. That's something that, as a faculty person, I do a lot. I sit here at the university, I do the same job, year in, year out, but I take people by the hand and they get launched into all kinds of different trajectories, and so from your from your perspective, if you are trying to survive, do so nicely, do so kindly, but do so confidently, and always with a help for somebody else. And so I understand that many of you want to get into the medical field. You've already decided you want to do something that's going to help other people. So thank you.
Yeah, and I think that was an excellent point because as people, something's different about you. You have an accent. Maybe you don't speak the language as well. Maybe you look different. Maybe you're from a different part of the neighborhood. Maybe you're from a different background. Whatever it is, it can be difficult, particularly in higher education, right? When it tends to become more homogenous, when you stand out, when you're different, it can be difficult to feel like you fit in, right? And one of the things that I have kind of learned to do over time is to recognize the best way to fit in is just to be a great student, just to be excellent, because excellence attracts people. And then as you're excellent, you don't rub it in people's face. You try to see how you can uplift others, both who are in your situation, but then also to other people. So being kind as you succeed, but at the same point, that confidence factor. We have to be confident. I am who I am, like Popeye says, right? I am who I am and I eat my spinach. We are who we are. So if we don't embrace that, guys, you're missing the opportunity to be your greatness in yourself, but then also to find your fit, because you have to create your fit when you are a bit different. And you mentioned work ethic and how your parents instilled that in you. So how did your parents go about that? Like, how were they kind of influences and impacts into your work ethic? And how has your work ethic served you over your career?
Well, my parents' work ethic came to me in two different flavors. My mom, who I alluded to earlier, was a refugee. She was German, but having grown up in Poland, and arrived in the West literally with what she was wearing. And she managed to go to college. We think she was probably the first woman in Western Europe to get a textile engineering degree. But she actually, she stuck to it. And if there wasn't enough food to eat, well, it didn't stop her from studying. And if she was tired, it didn't stop her from studying and doing what she had to do. My father never went to college. And yet, interestingly, when I was struggling with math, just please realize that I'm not one of those people to whom knowledge and understanding comes easily. I've certainly had to study hard and to revisit things and ask for help and try again and fall over and pick myself up and all that. But when I was struggling in high school with trigonometry, my dad sat up late at night trying to understand trigonometry so that he could explain it to me. Now that was that was a kindness, and probably actually helped me as I developed as an instructor and as a teacher. I will struggle to figure out how things work, to try to understand, so that I can understand them and explain them to other people. So when I went to Cambridge, I was way behind in terms of the curriculum. In the first week that I was there, actually, now I don't know who's going to hear this broadcast, but truth be told, my first week when I was a student, a member of the faculty wanted to know which idiot had admitted me to the college.
Yeah, who?
I asked a question. I made the cardinal error in this person's eyes of asking a question. And they asked a question because I didn't understand something. And it was in calculus. Now, the college that I went to was the college where Isaac Newton himself was a student and a faculty member. He invented the calculus there. So, of course, I ought to have known all these things.
Oh, shame. How could you expect to come to the school and learn things and not know everything? Shame on you.
If anybody listening has seen the musical Oliver or read the story about Oliver Twist,
yes,
it's to the point where Oliver wants some more food. He's hungry and he has the temerity to ask for more food. And the official just blows up and just more. Well, that's how I felt. I'm practically cowering in a corner at this point. This person's just going on a rant, like which clan let me in, and what are the standards coming to, and everything like that. And I stuck to my question. I said, well, that's why I'm here. I don't know some things. And I actually quite boldly just fought back at that thing. I really want to learn these things. So a couple of things I learned from that. Interestingly, the faculty member ended up as an administrator. So I think at some point somebody realized his calling probably wasn't in teaching. Secondly, I never belittle anybody for asking me a question, because the only stupid question is the question that wasn't asked. The only stupidity in asking questions is when you don't ask it, because you paid to be there. Somebody's paid for you to be there. Somebody's being paid to answer your questions. Ask your questions.
Yeah, 100%. Why is this? Okay. No, 100% on that asking questions. It's so funny. Students all the time, I can look in their face, right? And as a professor, you can look in students' face, you can see they're so confused, but they don't want to ask those questions, right? And for you, it could have changed your trajectory. And so, as you guys don't know, he kind of skipped over this, but at Cambridge University, completed his PhD in 3 years in materials. Let me get this right, in liquid crystalline polymers. If that sounds complicated, you know it is, right? And so here you have this student who comes into college, is starting out, and is like, Professor first day is like, who let you in here asking these ridiculous questions? Well, those ridiculous questions get you to a PhD, get you to this point. So what we have to understand, guys, is that when we see people who are successful, like Dr. Viney, when we see people who succeed big time, it is about that willingness to ask questions. It is about that willingness to be curious and to say, listen, I don't know things. That's how we get smarter. That's how you get the big brain in the room, is putting yourself out there and constantly asking questions. And I feel like you mentioned how people pay to be there. I feel like people don't take advantage of their education opportunities, not just to learn in the classroom, but to learn in general and to grow as a person during college. And for you as a professor and someone who's been around for a long time and seen lots of students, what advice would you have for students about taking advantage of the opportunity that college and higher education and graduate school provides, and how to make the most of it?
Read a lot, talk to people. So forming a good network is important. And what do I mean by a good network? If it's friends, try to trade up in life. So, your friends, if your friends can all be a little bit more successful than you are, of course, you realize that can't work all the way around, because we're not all...
Everyone's leveling up.
Right.
Circle.
but that's the point. If we collectively bootstrap ourselves upwards to greater things. And so if you can bring something to the table that other people where they can capitalize on your strength, if you can capitalize on their strength, then collectively you will do well. And I owe quite a good chunk of my success to the people who I hung out with the most as an undergraduate and as a graduate student, because these are the people I learned from. And I'd like to think that I helped them in a way as well, because they hopefully learned some things from me. So form a good network, read widely, go to seminars. If there's a talk on a particular topic, well, go. Sit in the front row, ask questions, take notes, follow up on it. Go to office hours. If there are office hours, if you are falling behind, and if there's tutoring, take the tutoring. Take those opportunities, because if you do the math and you realize what it costs you or somebody to go to school, and maybe it's undergraduate school, maybe it's graduate school, medical school, whatever it is, do the math and realize what is being paid per hour that you are in a class. And then you'll realize why successful people don't cut class, because realize what you may as well light, a couple of $100 on fire and burn it, which isn't a good thing to do.
I like that. I'm starting to say that, students. When you don't pay attention in class, when you don't go to class, when you don't read that book you bought, you're literally burning cash. That's the new slogan for the students. You guys are burning cash. When you guys think, oh, this is nothing, I'm just slacking off today, you're burning cash by the barrelful. Large bills, not small bills. Burning that cash.
And it's bad for the environment.
Exactly. We're burning all our ozone layer. We're already in trouble. We saw this. I think there's another storm added to somewhere in the South right now. It's crazy. But so taking advantage of these opportunities, guys, building and putting the right people around you. I think the other thing too is in college is a lot of students think they're good at something and then refuse to try other things. And as an engineer, right, and in your background and all these things, a lot of people would love to be an engineer. A lot of people would love to be in the sciences. A lot of people would love to do math, but they're like, oh, I'm not a math person. I'm not a numbers person. I'm not whatever. So how can people kind of cross that bridge to say, you know what, I can do this. I can do engineering. I can. Because I think, you know what I mean? It's like there's a big mental block for a lot of people who think they're not good with numbers. They're not good with technical things. They could never be an engineer. They could never be, something in the sciences. And so they say, oh, I have to be over in the humanities. It's just the way my brain works. What would you say to these kind of students? Because I hear it all the time. Students like, oh, I could never do that. I could never do that. Well, how do we cross that bridge?
One way to cross the bridge is to try it. Another way to cross a bridge, it's not the bridge that's the obstacle, it's the ravine which the bridge is trying to get across. So, don't look at the bridge as being the problem, look at the ravine as perhaps being the problem, and find another bridge. There's more than one way to get the other side of an obstacle. And interestingly, something that I've really come to appreciate in the USA is the idea of general education. Now, this might surprise people who are particularly more on the technical side, and many people go into a technical degree and they're really rather sad about having to, as they perceive it, to waste time on general education. But what Gen Ed does, it gives you other perspectives to look at a discipline from. So, maybe there are graphical ways to look at math, for example. So somebody who's got a more sort of pictorial view of the world, maybe they should read books or go to lectures or find applications of math, or realize the beauty in math that isn't just a pile of symbols and equations that is a sort of an esoteric language. So, in a sense, the same way that a catalyst, what does it do in a chemical reaction? A catalyst finds a different pathway to the chemical reaction. It doesn't knock over the barrier. It finds a way around the barrier or through the barrier, or a totally different pathway, and be open to those sort of possibilities.
Yeah, I like that, because it's not the bridge is the issue, it's that ravine, and we got to find a different way to get through it. And so for students, as they're trying to, let's say, in the sciences, and they're trying to approach this and they're having a different approach to it, you mentioned earlier about not kind of being afraid to fail and missing problems. I noticed that a lot of students are scared to be wrong, not just by raising their hand, but just be wrong with problems. And I try to preach, practice, practice, practice. But in your experience, right, as an engineer, right, that trial and error aspect, what could you say for students who struggle with, oh gosh, there's a block there where they can't get through problem sets and they're not willing. It's like you said, they try, but then the moment they hit that adversity, they stop.
I really encourage you to keep on trying, because it is the process of getting stuck will actually in the long run teach you more than if you just breeze through it. So the getting stuck, getting things wrong, and actually that is kind of how engineers work. And it's sort of an unfortunate thing, really, in a sense, but some of the best technological advances grow out of failure. A bridge falls down. People learn. A plane crashes. People learn. You get better planes. You get safer planes. So the errors by themselves, or get it, you can't do a math problem. Well, you will learn something by trying again and by getting help and getting somebody to actually help you through that. I have a lovely colleague here at UC Merced who I cannot win an argument with her, because, and it's wonderful, because if I'm factually correct, maybe it was some facts, and for some reason I got it right and she got it wrong, and she'll look me right in the eye and say, "All right, so I was wrong. So what have you learned today?" and turns the tables on me.
Love it.
I can't
win. Yeah. And so what? So what about you, though? What about you?
Yeah, right.
Oh my God.
So
everybody, guys, who's having fun with Dr. Viney right now? I see people commenting already saying, thank you so much. Julian, thank you for thanking Dr. Viney for being here. If you guys don't know, to reset what we're doing, I'm Dr. Pinesett. This is the Study Doc Show. We're bringing you guys experts, people who have succeeded in higher education, who have valuable pieces of advice to give you guys. We're going to be live every Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And today we're here with Dr. Christopher Viney. He's one of the founding faculty members of UC Merced. He is an engineer. He is the former chair now, correct? Of the Materials and Science Engineering Department at UC Merced. And I want to talk about that a little bit, because I went to UC Irvine, home of the ferocious anteaters, zot, zot, zot. And when I went to UC Irvine, back in my day, UC Irvine was also a fairly new, not quite as new as UC Merced, but a fairly new UC campus. And one of the things that students talk about a lot is, well, it's a new school. Should I go there? It's a small school. Should I go there? And people get concerned about these things as things happen. And so since you've been at a school like UC Merced from the very beginning, when it was just, would you say it was a farm? It was a
golf course, actually.
Golf course. There you go. It's a golf course to becoming a campus. What would be your insight for students about maybe some of the advantages they don't see from a small campus like that? Because my experience was incredible at UC Irvine, a growing campus, and I can share my experience. But from your experience, what did you see in terms of an educational environment that you guys were able to create there at UC Merced? and kind of for students thinking about newer schools or smaller schools?
So what I saw starting, and literally our first year, we opened to students in 2005, and there were 500 students. So 500 new students. That was campus at the time.
Wow.
So it was, in those days, I knew everybody. And I had to leave extra time to walk from where I parked my car to get to my classroom, because the people coming the other way, everybody wanted to stop and say hi, and I wanted to say hello to them. And so there was this sort of almost like a sort of a family atmosphere, which one would not get at a very large and more nameless institution. What we also found was that the students who did come, and people applied to other universities, but the ones who we got were the ones who wanted to build something. So they were pioneers, and they still are, because we're now in our, let's see, this is my 18th year there, so we must be in our 16th year of taking. So excuse me, I'm in my 19th year, so we're in our 17th year of taking students. I have to add one; it's a new year, you see. But we are still pioneers, because we are still small by UC standards. And so what you have is more opportunity to network, more opportunity to find a support group in your studies, more opportunity to work more closely with faculty, more opportunity to do research and to actually get hands-on research. And I know that there's always an exit survey they take people when they leave the UCs, and our students are leading, actually, in terms of system-wide, in terms of claiming the opportunities to do a research project. And this is all the way across all the disciplines. And so, and if you look at the rankings, which also matter, UC News and World Report just came out with some new statistics, actually, that were being quoted over the weekend. And UC Merced has overtaken a few of its sister campuses. I'm not going to mention the other ones. I don't think Irvine was one of them.
Not Irvine, never Irvine. The ferocious anteaters are always the top, number one, forever. Number one in my heart, at least. Does that count? U.S. News World Report, Pinesett's heart. Does that count?
But something that people have to realize too is that every degree at any UC, and never mind the rankings, but every degree at every UC has to meet UC standards. So when I was sitting there, literally with a blank notepad, it was an interesting experience. I didn't go to a school that taught me how to start a university. All right. I went to schools that taught me skills and confidence that if I think carefully and work and get organized and work in the right teams, something good's going to happen. And so I sat down with a blank notepad and actually had to start developing curriculum from scratch, and introduced. And so a small group of us, we started actually the bioengineering curriculum before we started the materials science curriculum. But the degrees and the courses all had to get approved by UC-wide committees. So it's not like UC Merced is there sort of trying to sneak in under the UC banner and umbrella. We are held exactly to the same standards as Berkeley and UCSD. So it was a high standard straight out of the gate.
Yeah, and I think you hit on a lot of things there. And I tell people all the time, like California's school system in general, state schools and also UCs have a very high standard across the board. And so sometimes when we're looking at, I'll hear students say, oh, I don't want to go to state school, I want to go to a UC school. State schools are also very strong, but then even amongst UC schools, any UC school you get into, you're going to get strong educational foundation. And as you mentioned, at a school that's newer or smaller, you get that family kind of environment. You get those close interactions, and the number of opportunities compared to the number of students is so skewed in terms of opportunities that you're going to have more opportunities as an individual. And I experienced this when I went to Stanford Medical School, because we're only an 80 person per year medical school. So we're small on the medical school side. Their undergrad campus is also very small. And so there's lots of opportunities per student. So I think Stanford's a great environment. But when I went to UC Irvine, again, the ferocious anteaters, it was great because UC Irvine at that time, this is before UC Merced, I'm old, right? Before UC Merced was around, UC Irvine was like the little stepbrother of the UC system. It was like, oh, okay, did you get into Berkeley? Did you get into UCLA? Oh, you got into UC Irvine? Like, oh, right? It was like that kind of thing. But what was amazing was when I went to UC Irvine, I go back now, I don't even recognize the place because there's all these new buildings, all these things. But at that time, there was even, I mean, UC Irvine at that time, I think it was like 40 years old. It was such a smaller campus compared to some of the other schools that a lot of the resources were being funneled into new programs, into student opportunities, into new developing buildings and so forth. And so I had tremendous opportunities, but then also I had a nice supportive environment. And for me, a student coming in who wasn't a great student coming into college, it was a perfect environment for me because I got to have that kind of family feel of a it's still at a university, but it was more of a family feel in the sense that I knew where I could go, I could access people, and people knew me, and so it was a great experience I had. And actually, my cousin went to UC Merced. He actually graduated in engineering. He's got a great job now, but he raves about UC Merced because of that same thing, where he could literally go talk to any of his engineering professors. He could sit down, he could get research opportunities. He was doing great summer internships. He got to go to Germany actually and work on cars because I think he's mechanical. I don't want to misquote it, but he got to work on cars over in Germany and do like incredible opportunities that came because he was at UC Merced. And so for you guys, as you're picking universities, be open to the fact that a newer school or a smaller school provides unique opportunities that you may not have at a larger school where you are just one of a billion students. And so really keep that in mind as you guys go through. As we continue to talk, if you guys have any questions, I think I saw one earlier. If you guys have any questions you guys want to put in the box and ask Dr. Viney about his experiences, about your experience as a student, that he can shed some light on. There was a question here that I saw. When you guys see me looking down, because I'm trying to scan the box all the time, you guys know I don't read well. Let's see.
I'm trying to read the box as well, and my eyes.
I'm like trying to figure out what's happening. Don't read well, and it's like rapid fire going by. Antonio, hello, Gabrielle. So I won't even try to find questions in this box right now. You guys put some questions up that are further down in the stream, so I don't have to scan up and try to find things. But being an engineer, I've always, and I actually was fortunate enough to work. So again, the other person who has the most impressive CV I've ever seen is Dr. Derek Dunrankin. He's an engineer at UC Irvine. And his CV is crazy also. But what I loved, I actually worked at his research lab. So I worked in an engineering research lab. I got bored with the bio people, and I wanted to go work with some creative kind of problem solving types. I love to problem solve. And so I was like, I'm going to be in an engineering lab. And I worked at this engineering lab, and it was the most fun experience I ever had in undergrad because these guys, for fun, would literally make a pot of coffee and sit around and talk about what ifs and talk about this and how they could and I was like, I have no idea what you guys are talking about, but I am fascinated by all this engineer talk. And it was such a cool thing. Like they would take turns and get on the whiteboard and say, listen, we could do it if we did this and so forth. And so as an engineer, I always like to ask engineers, that engineer brain is different, right? Even for my pre-med people on the MCAT, engineers score higher. Engineering students score higher. Why? Because they're taught to think differently. They're taught to problem solve. They're thought to be creative. So as an engineer yourself, how can students at large, without going through a whole engineering curriculum, how can we develop that creativity, that engineer brain that allows us to kind of think through things, solve things, and see things differently?
Organization, in a word. So I will elaborate a little. I can stop there.
Done. Organization, guys. You guys got it. Boom. Run away with that right now. Run away.
And I am interested in creativity, and one of my courses that I taught at UC Merced, it was what's called the Spark Seminar, and it was called the creative process. And it's just something that, and the older I get, and the more I should also perhaps mention I dabble as a professional photographer, so not so good with people, but I go out and take pictures of things, right? But so I exhibit and try. I'm sort of fairly competitive at heart, So if I don't know how good or bad I am until I put my stuff on a wall and see how it compares to what other people are putting on a wall, all right? But anyway, so the thing that is often said about engineers is that it's all sort of math and there's no creativity. Well, engineers are actually one of the most creative groups of people, because what they do is they recognize a problem, and there's creativity in spotting the problem that you want to go and solve, spotting the need, and then methodically finding a way towards a solution. But the creativity is sometimes in the solution, sometimes in spotting the problem. And let me give you I'll give you a little research example, something that I got busy with in the days when I worked at the University of Oxford, and I had a final year undergraduate student who worked with me on this project. So many of you will have come across carbon fiber composites. All right, or composites, as you pronounce it in the USA. Right? Composites, composites.
Good there. Switched it up.
So, and even if you're not making airplanes, but maybe you ride a bicycle which has got a carbon fiber composite in it somewhere, or there may be a composite that a spare body part, an artificial bone or something that might be made out of a material like that. But if you're trying to make a large piece of carbon fiber composite, and let's talk about maybe think about a car body panel or an airplane wing panel or something like that, what you do is you take the carbon fiber and then you basically put glue on it, and then you put more carbon fiber on that and then more glue, and you basically build up a sort of laminated stack of what this thing's going to look like. And then you go and cook the whole thing in an oven. It's called an autoclave. Right, and you find autoclaves in the medical field as well for sterilizing instruments. Anyway, so this big oven, and what you've got to do is you've got to heat up this oven to then heat up the thing that's inside it that you're trying to actually make the glue, so that what's called cure the resin. And you spend 90% of the energy is heating up the oven, and only 10% of the energy is heating up the thing.
Wow.
And so you realize, is there some way you could heat up the thing, the panel, instead of heating up all that space? And so then you realize, well, carbon fiber is a really good electrical conductor. So if you put some electrical contacts on the carbon fiber, and then, now it's a good conductor, but of course there's a limit to what it'll conduct, so you put a large current through it, briefly, you'll heat it up from the inside and cook it from the inside out, instead of from the outside in. And all you're doing is you're heating the thing, you're not heating the oven.
Wow.
So you see, so there's an example of a creative need. We want to save energy. Can we make the same thing, but via a different route that's going to actually be better for the environment? And then you turn the thing on its head and you heat the thing and you don't heat the space instead. So that's recognizing a problem, finding a solution. Now, if you're an artist, artists don't just suddenly randomly, we may see this in the movies, but it's not like they walk outside and suddenly, I wandered lonely as a cloud, and suddenly this poetry sort of leaps out. No, they had to plan to maybe go on a walk. They took a notebook with them. They found a particular part of the countryside that they know will inspire them. So there's planning in art, and there's creativity in engineering. And so if you want to think like an engineer, plan like an engineer, but don't focus just on one solution. Look around you, look at the natural world for inspiration, and some of the neatest things that are happening in engineering right now are where engineering is learning lessons from biology. Yeah. Nature's been making machines for a very long time, and we can learn from them.
Yeah. Now that's an awesome point about changing kind of your lens. I didn't even realize that 90%, like, you're wasting all this energy heating the environment, heating this oven, when you're like, oh, I can just pass it this way. And I think as students, oftentimes when we face obstacles, whether it's in our personal life, professional lives, academically, whatever, oftentimes we are stuck in a problem longer than we have to be because we are looking at it from one perspective, one angle. And we fail to step back and say, wait a minute, is that really what I should be trying to solve? Or is the issue bigger over here? And kind of change the way we look at it. So I love that. Utham asked in the box here, he's a question, what are your thoughts about implementing college-wide curriculum and that emphasizes the utility of study skills and promoting an inner locus of control? So I think what you're asking there, Utham, is how can we, or should we, and how can we implement curriculum of study skills and also internal locus of control mindset for students in college? I think that's what you're asking there.
I think we do if you take the right sort of gen ed course. And so when you take a writing course, or when you take a design course, if the writing course is telling you how to organize your thoughts, or if the design course is teaching you to be creative, so take a course that is outside your discipline and preferably outside your comfort zone. just stretch a little bit. And it is something also to realize is that, we spend a lot of time thinking about what should I major in. Well, if you major in something, it's probably more important actually to major in something than not major in something, in anything, because so much of a course, when employers hire somebody, they don't necessarily care if you can do problem 35 on problem sheet 6 in some professor's course. The employer doesn't care whether you can solve that problem. What the employer cares about is whether you've learned study skills, whether you've learned time management, whether you are responsible, whether you are reliable. So what we call soft skills are actually one of the most important skills that you can learn. And now this is Google and other tech companies. When you look at how they build teams and what they're looking for, they want the English major on their technical team, because the English major can teach them how to communicate and can deal with large amounts of information and can help bring people together and share different perspectives. Because what do you learn in an English degree? You learn how to view a particular situation from the point of view of the different characters in it. That's a hugely useful skill. So take your writing course, and not to get rid of it or to get it over with, but to actually learn communication skills.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because we do all this college stuff, and now there's like this big push right now actually to kind of destabilize what higher education is and move more to competency-based curriculums, because the value of a diploma has kind of been watered down a little bit by a lot of people who just rush through college and aren't actually learning. And so for you guys, it's important that you pay attention to all your classes, learn the material, but also recognize the skills that you should be picking up. So when you guys look at these group projects, and you're like, oh, I hate to do group projects, it's an opportunity to develop your soft skills. When you get an English class or a writing class, it's your opportunity to work on your writing skills for your life. It's not about whatever book you're reading, right? If you're taking a certain class, it's not about that class, but you guys have to develop a skill set, a learning skill set, a problem-solving skill set, a skill set of that determination, a skill set of this. All these skills you're going to need, because that's what's going to be fruitful for you in jobs. And what's interesting now is, right, as I go and I speak to students, I create courses and so forth, but a lot of the skills, right, even though I'm a physician and I'm on the science side of campus, a lot of these skills came from my high school history teacher, who literally pulled me aside. It was like, I could tell you're bored to death in my class. You are literally not paying attention to anything I'm saying. And I'm like, yeah, I don't really like history. History has nothing for me. I'm going to go be a doctor. And he's like, it's not about history. While you're in here, let's work on your reading skills. Let's work on your writing skills, because the ability to express yourself, that's the key to life. And a lot of what I do in my writing, a lot of what I'm speaking, it came from the fundamentals I learned in that sophomore AP European history class. Mr. Robinson, I'll never forget it. AP European history, Mr. Robinson. I was like, I hate this class. So they're trying to talk to girls, right? I'm 15, trying to talk to girls. And he's like, focus. This is good stuff for you, and don't miss this opportunity. And it served me well, both in college, in medical school, and it served me well in my life, is taking a second and looking at things differently and finding the learning and finding ways to engage and improve yourself and develop skills that really matter.
Yeah.
I think another interesting topic is you have a PhD, you're in an academic institution, and the PhD landscape has kind of changed. And so I have a lot of students asking me about PhDs and about an academic life and being a professor and what that pathway is like. Can you speak to kind of how higher education has evolved, and students thinking about PhDs? What can they do to put themselves in position? Should they get a PhD? How is it being a professor? How is it being a new professor now coming up? Like, how has that process changed?
It's changed. Excuse me. It's changed a lot, because I think these days it's actually, although the demands are probably increasing all the time, and so as we're aided by technology, productivity in some senses can increase. But I also think it's a more supportive environment than it used to be. So I was, and I haven't said this phrase for a while now in this discussion, but I was lucky, I'll say it again, in the sense that the department that I got tenure in the US system was actually a supportive department. I would say that was relatively unusual at the time. And so, yes, so I don't know how many of your participants here know about the tenure process. So tenure, it's an interesting concept in academia, but it is something that, if you're a professor, you should strive for, because tenure is where you survive a probationary period, and then you get, it's what is essentially a permanent position. You can't be fired for your ideas or for being unconventional. Obviously, you've always got to.
That's
You've always got.
key. That's key.
You've always got to be legal, of course. You can't break the law, and it's not a license to. Freedom of speech is kind of a difficult thing. So let's put it this way: there's always a principle of community at a university. So you may what you think and what you say may not always be the same thing, because you have to be respectful of everybody. That's really important. So in all your dealings with people, be respectful. But you can't, if you have an unconventional, let's say you've got some new model of how the immune system works, and it's not the model that everybody so far subscribes to. It's not a popularity constant. You're allowed to have those ideas, and if your ideas are any good, you'll get funding and you'll get results and you'll publish them, and you have that opportunity. That's what tenure gives you. It gives you the right to. It's some protection against essentially sort of arbitrary dismissal. If you don't have tenure, then you've got it's basically you're on a finite clock, and then you have to leave after a particular time. So, aiming for tenure is good. The process, I think, these days is a lot more supportive, and certainly, speaking for what we do at UC Merced, there's mentoring. So the young professors come in, we give them a little bit of grace period. They don't have to teach quite as many courses as they would under a full load. They've got time to get the research up and running. We provide training and opportunities about how to mentor a graduate student, how to write a research grant proposal. So the support network again, and people are realizing that somebody with a lot of training, and then you invest money in their training and their success, you really do want them to be successful. So in that sense, now in terms of the amount, let's say the number of papers you might need to get tenure, that's more these days than it used to be. And I'll just flat out say that. So my own PhD supervisor, who's also one of my best friends, he was horrified when he realized how I was being evaluated, just in terms of the amount of productivity that I needed to get tenure when I did. And that I got tenure in 1993, so that gives you a perspective on that. Now, he got his tenure and a permanent job at Cambridge University. It must have been in the mid-70s, perhaps, something like that. So about 20 years before I got it. And he claims to have got it with 8 publications.
Wow. That's not a lot of publications for tenure.
No, but but the important, that all sounds more quantitative than I wanted it to.
No, but that's the point, right? Is what you're saying is that the standard of it has changed, but then also the support that goes with it has changed.
Yes. And so the realization that you're dealing with human beings and there's human capital involved, and really you just want people to be successful. And because if somebody doesn't get tenure, there's a huge expense in recruiting somebody else, and getting startup funds for them, and investing another whole sort of series of training and probationary period and things. So it's much better if we can just all help each other to be successful, and we do that. So
yeah. And one of your passions, as we were talking earlier, is in education equity, right? And creating opportunities for students. How can we do that? Because I think, especially like in this time, we talk about like different environments in education, and how do we make things more equitable? How do we create opportunities for people? How do you think we can make education more equitable? What are things that we can do? What are things that students can do to increase opportunities?
So probably the biggest thing to make it equitable from a university perspective is simply to be careful about the metrics that we use when choosing the people who are admitted. And I think the University of California does a superb job of trying hard to develop metrics that are blind to artificial criteria. So what you want to do is find somebody who, given the opportunity to have this education, will be successful in it. And that
say that again for people.
So that you want to choose people who, if given the opportunity for an education, can be successful. And that's got to be completely so. And in science, it's sort of perhaps even easiest to say that, science and engineering, because science is by nature blind to gender and economic opportunity and lifestyle choice. So, all the ways that we artificially characterize people and put barriers in front of them and differentiate and discriminate. Science is blind to all of that. Science just cares whether the science is right or not. Now, in terms of access, and across all disciplines, we just have to be careful that when we're not perhaps using a metric for admissions where the metric is where success can be paid for by a subset of society. And so you may have heard that the SAT has, the UC is not using the SAT in the way that it would traditionally have done, because the SAT is something that you can pay money and get coached and pass an exam.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be successful as a student.
Right. Now, I just watched, was it the admission scandal on Netflix about USC and the celebrities who were paying for scores and paying for admissions and all kinds of things. And I taught. That's how I paid my way through college. Was had a tutoring company. One of the things I did was I did ACT and SAT tutoring. And in ACT, in 6 years I was doing ACT, I only had one student ever score below 90 percentile, and they scored like 80 something percentile. But it was just kind of proof that it's one of those things that if you have the opportunity to get a coach like me or like someone or one of these big companies, and you have the economic means to pay for that course, it puts you in a different position than other students, right? And so that's part of the reason. And I think a lot of people were kind of, it's all like with every change, people were split on should the UC campuses get rid of the SAT requirement? Should we change how we look at admissions? And I think it was a change for a good. But a lot of people were like, well, then how are we evaluating people? And I think what you said was so powerful. So what made you say it again was what you're looking for in any opportunity, whether it's a job or college, you're looking for people who, if given the opportunity, would be successful. And so it's a projection game. And so I think that's so powerful because people miss that point. They're like, wait a minute, oh, the SAT, how do we judge? No, you can look at what someone's done, and you can see characteristics. A lot of times, right? It's soft skills. It's how things come together. You can see that someone's going to be successful with this opportunity, and that's really what you want. You don't want people are going to throw it away and underperform. You want people are going to overachieve and make the most of the resources that are out there. Are you guys still with us? We're hitting almost the hour mark. If you guys are enjoying this interview with Dr. Viney, take a second. We are live action. To like this video, to comment, to let him know you're enjoying his time here. I'm seeing questions pop up here. Dr. Viney, is there anything you could tell your 20-year-old self now? What would it be?
Wow. my 20-year-old self. How long do I have?
The list goes on and on and on. So much.
Well, here's one. Just stop worrying whether you're going to get a date. The right person will come along. And it's true. It happened.
I laugh at that especially hard because someone commented I'm like the dating expert because I always use dating analogies. But I said everyone knows the feeling of being scorned. We know that feeling. Dating it's prominent on our minds. So it's important to know it's going to be okay. You're going to find that right one. And to go back to the bullying thing, it's the same thing. To take away this question here, guys, you're going to find your people. I think a lot of times as young people, again, as I get older, I recognize the silliness of things I focused on when I was young, worrying about, will she come along? Will they come along? Who will like me? And you realize that later down the road, like, man, none of that mattered. I should have just been enjoying every opportunity. I should have been meeting as many people as I could. I should have been doing things and not worrying about how it was going to turn out, just experiencing life. And I think that's one of the fortunate things about education, and we kind of hit on this, is yes, you should be taking your classes for your major, but you should also be learning in the classroom, but then also you should be learning outside of the classroom. You should be thinking about things that happen in your day. You should be observing things. You guys should be paying attention. You should be journaling. You guys should be making the most of your college experience, because that's exactly what it should be, a full experience that you've gone through, right? And Dr. Viney's been through a lot of school. He's been around a lot of students, and I'm sure he would tell you the same thing. And I'll ask him right now, for students, what would you, so let's ask that question. So someone asked you what you would tell your 20-year-old self, but if you could speak to these college students and tell them, hey, in college, I would do this. What are the things, like, what are some things you would tell these students? Like, you're there, you're at college. This is the time of your life. What are the things that students should be doing or looking into or spending time, taking advantage of in the college experience?
I will repeat something I said earlier. Find an experience that is outside of your comfort zone. That broadens the track that you're on, because the track isn't so important as the skills and the confidence that you will pick up. Try really hard to meet people outside of your own culture, because the world needs more of that, and people actually having dialogue across differences of opinion and differences of background. And if I look on Facebook, it's very polarizing. Everybody who's a Trump supporter is still a Trump supporter, more vocally so, and everybody who isn't is still, and more vocally so. And sometimes I think that people are polarizing out of fear, because they do what they do because they're being pushed deeper into their own comfort zone than being encouraged to come out of it. So learn a foreign language. Actually, learn a foreign language. If you're looking for a date, find somebody who's not from your hometown and who's not from your culture. Learn how to cook.
Yes, please.
Learn how to cook. Learn about good nutrition. And if you can learn how to cook, you're going to be welcome at many, many parties.
It's true. My study group always had someone who could bake. It's key. But I think that gosh, guys, we've got to get out of our comfort zones. And I think what's interesting, you mentioned social media, is we lose nuance, we lose subtlety when we narrow. When you guys get outside your comfort zone, you start to understand that not everything's black and white. There's a lot of gray, and there's a lot of nuance to things. And one of the best things that ever happened to me early on in my career, I was trying to do college in 2.5 years. That was my goal, because I'm an idiot. I was like, I'm going to do college in 2.5 years. Apply to medical school. It's going to be amazing. And it, of course, went horribly wrong. But through that failure, it allowed me to have, because I was taking so many units, it allowed me to have a lot more freedom and space in my 3rd and 4th year schedule, even my 2nd year schedule. So I actually ended up taking enough classes to have a dance minor. I actually ended up taking enough classes to have a business major, but I got a business minor because UC didn't offer a business major at the time. But what was amazing is by taking the time, like being forced essentially to take the time to go outside my comfort zone of step away from the sciences, do other things. It was incredible because it gave me new perspectives and ways to look at things, and it rounded me out. And I love the business side so much, something I never thought that I was like going to be into, that I actually took a pause from the medical school pathway, and I went and got my master's in public health with a focus in health service management, so another business degree, because I was like, I want to learn more about this stuff. And it's one of the great travesties, I think, as you mentioned, people devalue general education. People devalue things that are outside of their main track of focus, and they miss those opportunities. They miss that opportunity to broaden themselves. I think it's a great travesty in our system. And so pay attention, guys. Go outside your comfort zone. There's so much out there. The world is so big. The world's so amazing. Take advantage of all that stuff. I wish I would have learned a music instrument. I tried for like a week to learn guitar, and I quit. As we talk about not being a quitter, I was a quitter. My fingers were sore. I was frustrated factor like 1,000, and I quit the guitar. But I wish I would have learned a musical instrument. Wish.
It's not too late.
I don't
You
know.
can do it.
It might be too late for me. I've quit on myself.
my turn to say, you've done all that. You can do it.
Oh gosh, you know what? I stick to just karaoke. Karaoke is my musical instrument of the day. I'm excellent at clearing out a karaoke establishment. Excellent. It clears out quickly as soon as I hit the stage. Well, do you karaoke, Dr. Viney? You're a karaoke man?
No, but I did on occasion. I don't know if your participants here know what a punt is in Cambridge. It's not a football manoeuvre. It's a
No.
flat bottom riverboat. And there
Okay.
were a couple of occasions when when a foursome of us punted. And what we and you have to realise, of course, now giving a little bit away here, but the legal drinking age is lower in the UK than it is here. So we took a punt, and stopped outside a pub on the riverbank and sang Barbershop Quartet until people gave us enough money to go away, and then we had our dinner money to go to a different pub.
Outstanding. 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 Love it. You will pay me to go away. We will be that terrible. Our objective, we know where we're at. That's kind of my theory. It's like people just like, oh, he must be, to get up there and sing like that, he must be a nice guy because he is awful. My karaoke track is Benny and the Jets, and it's one of those songs that's kind of off anyway, but then when I sing it, man, it's to a whole nother place. So yes, so I can relate to your story. That is awesome. Singing there, you will pay us to go away so we can fund the rest of our evening. Wait, apparently we missed Andrew's question while we were laughing here. Andrew, it's not about you, okay? It's not about you. We're over here talking about singing. Let's see. Yes, I do sing in my courses. All my students, my singing voice is very on point. It's very, very. Andrew says, what advice do you have for someone who wants to be a PT but has a business degree but a cumulative undergrad? That's kind of a complicated question. So essentially, I think you're asking me, and I think you're not asking Dr. Viney. So the answer to your question, Andrew, is if your GPA is low, it doesn't matter what you want to go into, you got to fix the GPA. Because any of the things we're talking about, PT or you go into business, whatever, your GPA has to be higher. And so this is one of the things that happens to students is they don't recognize, again, you guys are young people, so you don't understand the scope of your actions and other things you do. Your GPA is the key to open all the doors of your life. If you aren't taking care of your grades, you can't get involved in the extracurricular activities you want to get involved in. You can't get involved in these early career opportunities, these kind of things, because they have these requirements. So it's very important you guys protect that GPA. And in your case, whatever you want to go into, you've got to improve that GPA. So fix it.
I've just been following in the chat. I think it was Victoria who earlier on. I can't see that part of the chat anymore. But I think Victoria said she was a UC Merced student.
Oh yes, and wants to contact you. Yes.
Yeah. Send me an email.
Okay. I'm gonna put Dr. Viney's contact information in the box after we're done. If you guys want to reach out to him, you guys are enjoying this conversation with him. Again, this is live action. It's very difficult to get on here live. So please take a second, guys. Like the video. Let him know you appreciate him. Comment. Let him know you appreciate him being here with us. So Victoria also asked, while we're on the subject of Victoria, how to balance being a pre-med student, but also finding the time to do extra things. So how can students balance their time better?
Keep track of what you're spending your time on.
Yes.
So it might sound a little bit nerdy, but nerd is cool, right?
Yes.
So okay.
Revenge of the Nerds is every day in life. I tell people. I said I am a nerd, and I am a nerd proudly because it's literally the movie, and that's a very old reference for some of you guys, but it is Revenge of the Nerds all day, every day. The nerds are winning, so come over to our side and be nerdy.
So keep a planner, and in that planner, you write down how you spent your day. You write down what you wanted to do at the day, but then also see how you spent it. And I'm willing to bet that you will find places in that schedule that you think, gosh, why did I do this? I should have done that instead. Or this was not a great use of time. So you've got to be pretty relentless. You put in your planner when you're going to study, and when it says study, that is what you do. And you put in time off. You put in that other thing that's going to stretch you and then take you outside your comfort zone. Put in the dance class, and put in time to sleep, time to eat, time to do the laundry. Make sure that you do all of those things. Maintain a routine and a productive routine, and then, once a week, whatever, look back and say, okay, maybe I shouldn't have let myself go and sit in with this my friends, my so-called friends, wanted me to spend another 2 hours just sitting around shooting the breeze. And what did I get out of that? Well, what did any of us get out of that?
Yes.
All right, that's where I'm going to have my dance class next week.
No, I love that. And you guys know I'm time management 1,000% of the time. And that makes me ultra nerdy because I'm very into it. But there's a couple key things you point out there. One, you got to track that time. A lot of you guys aren't spending time the way you think you're spending time. Track your time, figure out where it's at. Then once you track it, actually look at it and say, wait a minute, why am I doing that? What is that? Is that helping me? And then the third thing is you have to hold yourself accountable enough to make the changes.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to shoot the breeze with their friends. Everybody wants to stare at the sky for 3 hours. But the people who are going to be successful, right? If you want to improve your grades, as Andrew was talking about, you've got to focus in and recognize that you're giving away time. Just like earlier we said, you're burning money when you're not going to class. You're burning money. You're burning all kinds of things when you're not paying attention to your time. You're just giving the time away, and your time is much too valuable. So we've got to track it. We've got to assess it, and then we've got to make changes. Got to make those changes. Can't just be like, okay, well, I'll do better next time. Well, how are we going to do better? In what way?
One of the most successful people I knew as an undergraduate, remember, you hang out with people who are good for you. And so there are three other people that I can think of in particular, and I still know what they're up to even these days. But one of them in particular, very successful, had a stellar career in the educational field. But if we got back from lectures and it was still 10 minutes before the cafeteria opened for lunch, he did something with those 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And I learned, instead of just sort of plopping down in a chair and sort of doing nothing, what can I do in those 10 minutes? I can tidy my desk. I can clear out my briefcase. I can, do the dishes or something.
Yeah.
Use the time.
No, I call it closing the gap. So one of the simple ways that you guys can create more time is closing that gap. So a lot of times we have transition time, or we have sometimes when things end early and so forth. And a lot of times we think, oh, great, this ended early, so I do nothing. But instead, those are easy opportunities to move forward and to be productive in some way. So look for ways you can close the gaps in your schedule, or look for ways, and you guys are just sitting there, instead of playing that game on your phone or browsing through your social media, how can you be building yourself? Instead of commenting on posts that nobody's ever going to read, right, for some celebrity, how about you send a thank you message? How about you send an inquiry email for a meeting with someone like Dr. Viney to figure out, right? Be productive with that time. You wouldn't think it's a lot, but you can make a lot of difference in your productivity by taking advantage of those small moments that we normally just give away.
Yep.
So, okay, we're at an hour and 12 minutes, so we're gonna start wrapping things up. We've sufficiently talked, Dr. Viney. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. Students, do we appreciate Dr. Viney being here and giving you guys such awesome, and again, I'm going to put Dr. Viney's contact information in the box below, but if you guys can recognize achievement, and again, we didn't get into 9/10 of his CV, but the principles he's laid out to you guys, hard work, right? Not having parents who were these huge successes. He didn't have all that stuff, but they give him a work ethic, right? And he used that work ethic to grind, to get things done, to not be dissuaded when people, right, were discouraged and say, how did you get in this university? To stick with it, right? To rise to higher education and continue to work and to strive. And then at the same time, through it all, as successful and humble as he's being right now, to constantly look for ways to uplift others, right? And to be kind and to pay it forward and to push things forward. And it's created a huge successful career for him, and monitoring his time and being a nerd and so forth. So all of you guys recognize these key takeaways. It matters. And you guys are going to see, as we talk to more and more people, you're going to see a lot of these themes recur, right? I'm constantly saying the same things to you guys, right? Because it's simple. We make it complicated, but it's simple. It's simple, not easy. I guess I should say that way. They're simple things, but they're not easy to do. And Dr. Viney has done it in spades, and that's why he's been so successful. And I thank you so much, Dr. Viney, for coming in and giving us your time. Is there any parting words you have for the students as we get out of here?
Well, thank you to everybody for being here and for showing some interest in how the world works. Good luck. I'm noticing that Julian Alexander is wanting to know about students who begin their journey at an older age. Try and get a hold of me outside of this conversation. I can tell you about some successful people who've done that, and perhaps that's a gateway into the closing word. As you read, as you study history, and literature and these things, history, literature, the real world, your newspaper, they are full of people who can be your role model. Learn from people who have been successful and who overcame, in many cases, obstacles, or who had to take a different pathway to get to where they were. And you will almost, I think, always find that whatever the obstacle is that you face, somebody has already shown you at least part of the way, if you can learn a little bit about them and from them. So, Gen Ed again, very useful.
Yeah. Everybody, look at that. As we leave, he's leaving you guys with bombs. So thank you so much, Dr. Viney. I appreciate it. Thank you guys who joined us live. If you guys don't know, we're going to be live every single Monday, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, bringing you highly successful people, highly expert people to give you guys key words of wisdom to help you be more productive, help be more positive, and to take advantage of this journey and experience it to the fullest, guys. College and your academic career, I look back on it now. I don't look forward to doing, I couldn't go back and do a 20-page paper. I could, but I wouldn't want to. But the rest of it, the rest of college, I would love to go back and have it all over again. So take advantage of this time, guys. Recognize that you guys can all be great students no matter where you're coming from, but you got to do these things that he's talking about. Hard work, you got to be dedicated to it, and you got to take advantage of opportunities, build that network, and so forth. So thank you again, Dr. Viney. Thank you guys all for joining us live action. I appreciate everybody who came out tonight. And like I said, we'll be back next Monday, 5 p.m. Okay, Pacific Standard Time with another expert for you guys. Thank you so much. And if you enjoyed this video, like the video, comment on the video, share this video to your social media. Take a second. And I will see you guys all next time. That's it for another episode of the Study Doc Show. Show your love by smashing the like button and commenting in the box below. Today is the day, guys. No more excuses, no more complaining. You're going to take your future into your own hands. You're going to dominate. You're going to be successful. I challenge you. What are you going to do today to make your life better? Get to my website, thestudydoc.com. Grab a free ebook, sign up for a free webinar, and if you're really ready to transform, enroll in one of my life-changing courses or coaching programs. You have greatness inside you. Let me show you how to unlock it so you can dominate and make your dreams a reality. No excuses, just dominate.